You've probably noticed that there's an egg shortage and that the price of eggs is skyrocketed. And that is if you can even find any in the store. So if you're planning to make any recipe or dish that calls for eggs as an ingredient, you're going to be happy to know that there are easy to find and affordable egg substitutes for baking that you can use. And you probably already have them in your house. So stay tuned because I'm sharing everything you need to know about egg substitutes for baking, how to use them, and how to find them in this video. Hey everybody, Erin here with Healthy Mom, Happy Family. And if you are looking for an alternative to eggs to either cut down on your grocery store cost or just because you don't have any eggs on hand, I am here to help. But before we dive in, I just want to remind you that if you are looking for nutrition tips and quick and easy recipes, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video. All right, so let's dive in and talk about the most common egg substitutes. Because when it comes to egg substitutes, there are so many options. You can use chia seeds, flax seeds, tofu, bananas, even applesauce or yogurt. But what you need to know is that what substitute is right for you is going to depend on the purpose of the egg in the recipe. Eggs can be used for everything from flavor to texture to structure. They can even act as a leavening agent or a thickener. So you have to understand why the egg is in your recipe in the first place before you pick the right substitute. Otherwise, your recipe might not come out the way you planned. So that is where today's video is going to help. I'm going to show you what egg substitutes you can use in baking and how to use them so your recipe turns out the way you had hoped for. So first, let's talk about how much egg substitute to use, okay? Because this is important when you are substituting in any recipe. You want to think about the amount of volume the egg is adding to a recipe. And in general, one egg is basically 1/4 cup of volume. So that means when you're swapping an egg out of a recipe, you want to make sure that the volume you're replacing it with is about equal. Otherwise, the outcome of the recipe can be altered. So you want to make sure you use substitutes that are in equal volume for the best outcome. All right, so let's first talk about egg substitutes in baked goods. Because when you're substituting eggs in baked good recipes, you want that egg to act as a binding agent because it's gonna give structure to the food. And thankfully, there are a lot of swaps that you can use that do this. So let's look at a few of my favorite. My favorite egg swap is to use chia egg or chia seeds. And this is so simple to do. Basically, all you have to do is take 1 tablespoon of chia seeds and combine it with 3 tablespoons of water. Then you're gonna let it sit for about 4 minutes. What this does is it allows the chia seeds to absorb the water. They create this gel-like substance that can then be used in a recipe in a replacement for a whole egg. So that 1 chia egg substitutes 1 egg in a baked good recipe. Another substitute I love is flaxseed. Now, just like chia seeds, flax seeds also work to provide structure as an egg substitute, but there are a few important differences you want to understand. First, you have to use ground flax. Otherwise, it's not going to absorb the water and create that gel-like substance you need. So you have to make sure that if you're using flaxseed, you either grind it yourself in a coffee grinder or a food processor, or you buy it already ground. And then you also want to use just slightly less water than you would with chia seeds. So for every tablespoon of ground flax, you're going to combine it with 2.5 tablespoons of water and let it sit for about 4 minutes. That's going to create that gel-like substance that you can then put into a recipe in replacement for an egg. And this works really well in recipes like cupcakes and muffins to give that same texture without needing the egg. Now, one substitute you probably have on hand is banana, and mashed banana is a really easy and affordable egg substitute. Now, when you use this swap, you want to use a ripe banana, that way it mashes really easily. And basically, 1/2 of a large banana mashed is going to equal about 1/4 cup in volume. So that's going to be an equivalent to 1 whole egg in a recipe. Now, bananas are great because they give moisture and sweetness to a recipe as well as structure. So this is a really great swap in sweet recipes like cookies and muffins, cupcakes, pancakes. This is a great way to use the banana as a substitute for egg. If you are replacing a large volume of eggs, so you're using multiple portions of banana, you do want to realize it might make the flavor of the recipe a bit sweeter. So keep that in mind. If the recipe calls for 4 eggs, you might want to use 2 real eggs and 2 substitutes with banana so that you still get the similar flavor of that final recipe. Another swap I love is using unsweetened applesauce because this is just like banana. It can work as an egg substitute in baking, and you want to make sure you're using unsweetened applesauce so there's no added sugar, and it's going to give texture as well as moisture and a bit of sweetness. So this is really great in lighter recipes like cakes and muffins. And the substitute here is a 1/4 cup of applesauce to replace 1 whole egg. Another great substitute is silken tofu. Now this I love as an egg replacement because it also provides quality protein back into the recipe. So if you're taking out the egg, you're losing some protein, the tofu allows you to put that back in. But with the silken tofu, you want to make sure you're making it as smooth and creamy as possible. So stick it in a high-powered blender or a food processor first, and then once it reaches that smooth, creamy consistency, you can use it as an egg substitute. You want to use a 1/4 cup of the silken tofu to replace 1 whole egg. I love using Greek yogurt in cooking, and it can be an amazing swap for so many things, but unsweetened Greek yogurt also works as an egg substitute, and it gives a rich texture, but it's also adding protein back into the recipe that you're losing when you take the egg out. If you want to use this as a swap, you would replace 1 whole egg with a 1/4 cup of unsweetened Greek yogurt. Now, if you haven't heard of aquafaba, you are missing out because this is an amazing egg substitute. And if you don't know what this is, aquafaba is the liquid from cooked or canned chickpeas. So you take the liquid and you can whip it up and use it as an egg substitute in baking. What you want to do is to replace 1 egg, you want to mix 3 tablespoons of aquafaba with about a 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar, and then you would whisk it to really add air to it. And that can be a great replacement for 1 whole egg in a recipe. Now this substitute also can replace egg whites. So if you need a light and airy texture, you need anything like a macaroon or a meringue, aquafaba works great. And you can whip it and make stiff peaks just like you would with egg whites. Now, if you need an egg to help your recipe rise, baking soda is going to be your new best friend. So to substitute eggs, you can combine 1 teaspoon of baking soda with 1 tablespoon of vinegar, mix it together, and then add that mixture into the recipe to replace 1 whole egg. This is specifically when eggs in the recipe act as a leavening agent to really help puff up the recipe. So this is a great substitute for that. However, it won't add as much structure as the other substitutes. Now, sometimes eggs in recipes are used for thickening. So if you think about recipes like custards and pies, eggs are many times adding to that texture and the thickness. Now, taking eggs out of these recipes sometimes can change the final product, especially depending on how many eggs are in the recipe. But if you are in a pinch, you can replace 1 whole egg with 2 tablespoons of cornstarch or arrowroot powder combined with 3 tablespoons of water. So you would take the cornstarch, add the water, mix it up, and then add that mixture into the recipe to replace the egg. All right, so the bottom line is if you don't have eggs on hand or you can't afford the skyrocketing prices or you just need to make a recipe without an egg, these substitutes in baking work for almost any dish. And then you can save your real eggs for things like omelets instead. So let me know in the comments below, what substitutes do you like to use for eggs in baking? And if you liked today's video, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss new tips, tricks, and recipes. Thanks for joining me.